If you do not want to be judged by anybody, especially by an eternal God, then that's wish fulfillment too. So everything that we believe has some element of wish fulfillment about it, and that subjective view has nothing to say about whether the religion is true or not. Hey, welcome to Church for Skeptics. Dan Arsenal here, and Merry Christmas. This is December of 2025. We're going to talk about the logic of Christmas. Now, I promise you, we're going to go around the barn to get there. It's going to take a couple of episodes to get to the actual birth of Christ in Bethlehem. I hope you'll stick with me with this. This is one of my favorite ideas. It's a blessing to me. It's a help to me to understand these things. Well, we're going to start way 2 miles high with this idea. Where did religion itself come from? I've done this years ago. I think about 15 years ago, I did a session on this, and we're going to go quite to the depth that I did there before because we're trying to get to Christmas. Here's where we're starting in. There are three big ideas. You can find a lot of books, anthropological books about this. There are three ideas about where religion came from. You know, one of my favorite old-timer music guys is Jethro Tull. Now, Jethro Tull's not the guy, he's the band, but Ian Anderson was the guy. And on his Aqualung album, he wrote something that said this: in the beginning, man created God in his image. Now, technically, Ian Anderson wasn't really an atheist, but it sounded like it when I read that on the album back when I was an atheist, so very compatible to me. Now, still, the music is the music and fun to listen to. His idea is that religion is subjective, and that's the first idea here. It comes from Sigmund Freud. Here's the idea. Religion is when I say subjective, religion is subjective. It's subject to the adherent. If I believe in God, then my religion is subject to me. It's not imposed on me. I impose myself on the religion here. So here's what Sigmund Freud said, that religion, belief in God, now keep in mind, he wasn't really addressing worldwide religions like Buddhism and Hinduism that I know of. He was primarily talking about Christianity and perhaps Judaism, him being Jewish and all. And some of his ideas, I think, are great ideas. I think the whole idea of examination and psychoanalysis in itself has a lot of, looking at yourself. That's, I think, a biblical thing. My point is this. What he said was that belief in God comes from wish fulfillment. Here we are. In his view, here we are in our little existence in a vast universe that is so much greater than us that we are helpless. That reminds me of Neil Young. I don't know on my music ideas today, one of my favorite songs, Helpless. And that's exactly what he said. We are helpless. And so we project an image of a loving Father who is so powerful he can take care of us and everything else. It's wish fulfillment. Now, the problem with that is that it might be correct, and your religion might be correct as well. It doesn't, in other words, his idea of where religion comes from, that I guess that might be the deal breaker, but it could come from God himself to us, and we'd still be wishing it were true. On the other hand, we could equally wish it weren't true. If you do not want to be judged by anybody, especially by an eternal God, then that's wish fulfillment too. So everything that we believe has some element of wish fulfillment about it, and that subjective view has nothing to say about whether the religion is true or not. I'd set that aside. I acknowledge it. And a lot of people think you just made it up. Apparently, Ian Anderson at least believed that about religion. He was against what we called organized religion. I guess he liked disorganized religion. At any rate, the second and most prevalent view of what is religion, where did it come from, is an evolutionary view. And that makes sense in the sense that evolution is the standard fare today for a long time. So the idea is this: as humans evolved, so did their religion evolve. As we became more intelligent, I suppose would be the answer for this. As we became more intelligent, then our religion advanced intellectually. That means there's a prescribed chronology of religions historically, supposedly. If evolution is true, it would be the case. The earliest in their view, in the evolutionary view, the earliest is what we call fetishism, which is basically just magic. There are forces, and it sounds like Star Wars, doesn't it? There are forces in the universe that manipulate nature itself, and so we're subject to that. We're the ones who get it, one way or the other, either good or bad. And so in the earliest, on the evolutionary view, in the earliest view, we manipulated those nature forces by magic. And some awful things, of course, happened to that. People were burying their living. They killed their children and bury them in a post so that the nature gods would smile as a sacrifice on their prosperity. The advancement then on evolutionary views would be the second level of religion is spiritism or animism. And when we think animism, we think animals, but animism just means, the word anima means soul. So now you have, think about this, you're going from these just impersonal forces of nature. Now you're advancing, you're evolving into the idea that these forces of nature have souls. They are persons of some kind, personified. So you go from forces to personification. That's the evolutionary view. Well, the next view would be polytheism. Now you have stories and deification of these personalities. And of course, then you get your Greek and Roman mythology and other mythologies. They were the most prevalent, of course, the ones we know the most about, Zeus and Jupiter and so forth. Think about it. It's the same forces. Now there are the thunder god, Thor, and Hercules, who supposedly became a god. Then, as humans evolved, now think about this, that means that we're more, on that view, that means we're much more evolved than, let's say, Aristotle. Now, Aristotle kind of made a transition, of course, Socrates as well. He rejected the whole polytheism idea and began to think of in terms of monotheism. Of course, it cost his life. There's a step between polytheism and monotheism that I should mention. It's called henotheism. And it's used a lot today because here's what it means. It means there may be many gods, but there's one big dog God. There's one that is in charge and rules the rest of them. So that's henotheism, and you see that in a lot of ancient cultures as well. So we go from fetishism, magic, to animism, souls, to polytheism, personalities, and deification of these gods. Now we go through henoism. One of those are the greatest. Now it's logical progression. The next one's monotheism. There's only one God. Of course, that's how we perceive the Judaic culture. While everybody else was wrestling about different gods, the Jews pretty much only had one God. And this is really important, I think. There are a lot of scholars today, even some Jewish scholars, who would say, well, the Jews really didn't believe in monotheism. They were more like of henotheism. They believed in one warrior God called Yahweh, but there were other gods as well, and they even are referenced, some would say, in the Bible as a female deity that goes alongside the male deity of Yahweh. Let me just say something about that. And I realize, I told you you're coming around the barn here. We're not at Christmas yet, obviously. Did early Jews worship a plurality of gods? And here's the point. It doesn't make any difference. It depends on which perspective you come from. If these scholars are atheists, and many of them are, if they're bent to that, then it doesn't matter if you believe in Zeus or Jupiter or Yahweh or Ashtaroth, which was supposedly the counterpart, the female counterpart to Yahweh. It doesn't matter because none of them exists. And so you're just talking about what people believe. Now, if you are a monotheist, as I am, then I want to find out which one's right. I want to find out how they come to believe. If the Jews, obviously they did believe in polytheism. Think about this. The first Jew, and we can pretty much pinpoint that even through scientific DNA research. They've come to believe that the first Jew was a male about 3000 BC or 2000 BC, about 3,000 years ago. I mean, that's science. But my point is this. Scripture tells us that he was a Chaldean from Ur of the Chaldees. And so if the Chaldeans had a plurality of gods that they believed in, you can be sure Abraham did too. The point is that God is revealing himself as himself to the world, and in particular starting with Abraham and then the Jewish people. So if the Jews were a little confused here and there, by the way, if you read the Old Testament, you'll find out that God continually says, no, worship me. I am the only God. I'm the only real one here. Don't become idolatry. If you do, you'll get judged for that. That's the history of Israel. So the point is, it's not a big deal really if some Jews did believe in other gods. You can read in Asherah, they constantly use the Asherah pole. It doesn't mean except that's what some Jews believed, and they were called idolaters in the Old Testament. And the whole point is God revealing himself as he really is. So if you think that God is a reality, it changes your perspective a lot. That's my point here. But there is another theory. So we have the subjective theory of religion, comes from wish fulfillment. You have the evolutionary theory. It's just as man evolved, so did the religion evolve. But there is another view that I think is the most accurate, has the most evidence for it. It is called original monotheism. There is great evidence to show that the earliest religions, when we can find them, and there's evidence for them, the earliest religions in nearly every culture was monotheism. Did you know that and by the way, I've checked this out. I teach Chinese students a lot through the Navigators, and I've asked them, have you ever encountered the most ancient religion in China called Changtai? They all knew it. They might be atheists now because they're coming from a present-day China, but they understood that at some point early in their history there was a religion called of Shangtai. You know what Shangtai means in Chinese? It means the Lord of heaven and earth. And the history tells us that that's the earliest religion, but it became the religion of the emperors. And so in the Zhou dynasty, about the same time as David was conquering Jerusalem, about the same time that Al-Ghazali was doing his thing in Iran or Iraq, I think it was Iran, that he was a Persian philosopher. About that same time, the Zhou dynasty that were worshiping Changtai decided that he was too great to be worshipped by the common people, and so they forbade the worship of Changtai, the Lord of heaven and earth, for the common people. Only emperors could worship him. Well, that vacuum then, within 300 years, you've got the Tao, you've got Confucianism, and you've got Buddhism. They filled that vacuum, and they're still prevalent, of course, today. The idea of monotheism, though, is all around the world. Early monotheism, the American Indians, the indigenous people here in our own country. Korea, the Incas, Burma. You see evidence of one true God. Think about the Great Spirit in North America. And they might even be a little bit henotheistic, having one great God, and maybe they would recognize some smaller ones. Let me give you a little story here to be finished today. In 1867, a Norwegian Christian missionary went to India and discovered north of Calcutta a large population of people called the Santal people. He was a great linguist, the missionary was, and so he quickly became fluent in the Santal language. And people, this is historical knowledge, people came from everywhere just to hear a foreigner speak their language. And so it was a great magnet. It was a great crowd girther. So he immediately began speaking the gospel to them. And he thought, it may be years before they even entertained the idea of a gospel or one God. But no, that wasn't the case. Their response is this: maybe in their view, maybe a God called Thakar Ju. Maybe Thakar Ju hasn't forgotten us after all. Maybe this man is telling us the truth. Well, who is Thakur-Ju? Well, the missionary was shocked because that means that the word Thakur-Ju means the genuine God, the singular, genuine God. And it turns out they have a long story about that, they have a remembrance, just like the Chinese, they have a remembrance of one God of heaven and earth. And of course, a great many of these Santal came to be believers in this. Neat story. I'll give you one last one here from the Bible itself. We have the idea of original monotheism. I know in the beginning God created heaven and the earth. He got it there, but that's not what I'm talking about. Abraham, we talked about him earlier. When Abraham got to the land of Canaan, he's coming from the land of Iraq, which per present day Iraq, and he gets to the land of Canaan, and he encounters the king/priest of a Canaanite city called Salem. It's an earlier name for Jerusalem. This Canaanite king was named Melchizedek. You can find him in Genesis chapter 17. And the neat thing is, this Canaanite, think about this now. This is 2000, almost 2000 BC. A little later than that, maybe 1800 BC. And so this Canaanite king and priest, Melchizedek, believed in one God. His name is El Elyon, which means God Most High. And so when Abraham, who knew this same God, because God had told him, leave your place and go to the land that I'll show you, and that land that he showed you would be Canaan, now he encounters Melchizedek, who seems to know the same God as Abraham. El Elyon. Different name, by the way, not Yahweh, El Elyon, but same God. The Lord Most High, the creator of the universe, the Lord of heaven and earth. This is what's neat about it. Abraham paid a tithe. He gave an offering of all that he had taken, and he had a lot at that point. He gave an offering to Melchizedek, and Melchizedek, the greater, blessed the lesser Abraham. Melchizedek blessed Abraham. It's quite a story in Genesis chapter 17. Now, here's the neat thing. When you get to the New Testament and Hebrews, the book of Hebrews, all that story is referenced about Jesus. The Jews had a priesthood called the Aaronic priesthood from Levi, of course, and Aaron, Moses' brother. The Aaronic priesthood was the priesthood of the Jewish people under the law. And so all the sacrifices were administered through those people. But Jesus was not part of the Aaronic priesthood. He is the high priest, according to Hebrews. Jesus is our high priest. What does that mean? It means he intercedes for us. That's what a priest does. A priest is a go-between between its clients, if you want to say that, and God. Well, we're the clients. Jesus is our high priest. And that's what the Bible even says. That's the reason he rose from the dead and ascended to heaven. He ever lives to intercede for us, to continually forgive our sins. He's the high priest. Here's the neat thing. He's also the offering. He offered himself as the sacrifice so that our sins could be forgiven. And now he's interceding for us, according to Hebrews chapter 7. He ever lives to intercede for us continually. That's the difference, it says in Hebrews, between the Aaronic priesthood. They had to keep replacing them because they all died. And yet Jesus is a priesthood. And here's the neat thing. In the order of, this is what it says in Hebrews chapter 7, in the order of Melchizedek. So now you have a Canaanite, original monotheist, who is the forerunner of Jesus, who is our eternal priest, and that eternal priesthood predates the Aaronic priesthood. It predates Judaism. It predates everything because God is eternal. I think this stuff is so neat, and it's just so reasonable, and it's just so interesting to me. And I hope this is helpful to you. Now, we didn't get to Christmas yet, but we will. In the next video, we're talking about the logic of Christmas. So we've kind of narrowed it down to here. Why do we think there's only one God? Here's the history of that. And I hope this is helpful and interesting to you. We'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.